peace, melanated family. How y'all doing out there? This is another
Hey.
Melanated Solutions
Hello,
podcast.
everyone.
We got our sister Bliss in the house,
Hello,
brother
everyone.
Duke the Root,
Mhm.
and I am your humble revolutionary Kashama Sankofa.
Humble.
So so welcome. First of all, make sure that you do like, share, and subscribe on YouTube and Facebook, family. Also, we will be sharing the link in our chats and our comment boxes so that you can join the conversation at some point within this broadcast. So without further ado, I am going to turn the floor over to Brother Duke so that he can go ahead and give us some of our family feedback from the last show.
Certainly. So it's that time again. And the last time we were together was November 6th when we were doing the Super Black election breakdown. And you can go back and check out that conversation. But what made that particular broadcast so special is that was the first time that we were able to introduce to you all our good friend and sis, Tiffany Bliss. And her commentary was absolutely necessary and needed. And we're so glad to have her as an ongoing member of our particular live streams. So to that end, one of the highlights from Family Feedback section was our friends over at the Black Film Festival commented and said, "Say it, Bliss," at a particular moment during the live stream. But interesting enough, our friend Holmes had mentioned that from their particular research, it's interesting that to them, the Green Party was the only party to specifically mention reparations in their plan and agenda going forward. And it's something that we as Black people should be considering when we are pushing for our particular issues to be addressed. Like, who is addressing us? So that was a particular comment from that live stream. We also have funny commentary just asking why was he in his underoos. If you want to know what that is in reference to, go back on November 6th and check out the live stream. There's a funny bit about someone in their underoos, apparently. So with that being said, we have a special current events going on. But before we roll that clip, I do want everyone to know that there is a trigger warning inside of it. In reference to what it is too, it is Black Death once again, and this is a particular graphic image about the corpse of an individual, but we'll let the current events go that way. If you are triggered by these particular images, please do what is necessary to come back. The current events should last no longer than 30 seconds, and then you can come back on in. So with that being said, I'll count down from 5 and then roll clip. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So I got a chance to see that current events video for the first time right before this broadcast. And Bliss, I know you had to ask me, like, are you good with that? Kashama, I'm like, not really. And I understand
Not good, but yeah.
Because I mean, I've started guarding my energy like that too. I don't particularly take to looking at that stuff. But I mean, this is a part of reporting what is happening. That's what's happening. We cannot, put our heads in the sand, and we are Black media, and that's our job. So I don't know. Y'all thoughts?
Well, I mean, when we talk about Kawan Charles, it's the modern day Emmett Till, so to speak. Right now, we don't know what exactly happened to him, but we know that it is pretty impossible for most of us to drown in ankle-deep water that we can stand in easily. So seeing that image, I think, puts some perspective on what we're dealing with in this particular situation. And there is a second autopsy that is confirming the first autopsy that's saying that this young kid, 15 years old, I can hardly talk about this, I'm sorry, drowned. So we got to figure out what happened, because that amount of damage to the face, they're saying, may have happened in the water because he was face down. But
Mm-mm.
I want us to understand how important it is to find out what happened to this child.
Yeah.
You don't drown in ankle deep water, a
And,
physically 15-year-old.
and there's nothing in ankle deep water um, that would cause that type of damage to the face. Like no animal life in ankle deep water that does that.
They're claiming that that's the possibility. And the both autopsy reports are saying that there was no ante-mortem damage done, and that means pre-death
Right.
damage. I don't know how that's determined. I'm not a specialist. I don't do autopsies. I don't know, but that's what both autopsies are saying. So we got to figure out a better answer than what we're getting. So there, we are still waiting on a toxicology report, because the only thing that would make any sense is that he was unconscious and placed in that water face down. There's no way he went there and just drowned in ankle deep water. And I can't speak to what kind of aquatic life is in the water. I don't know.
I know one thing for sure. I couldn't, take some random 14, 15-year-old white child, along with, with my goddaughter to come and hang out. And then they pop up dead, basically almost in my backyard. And I just be walking around all willy nilly, like, nothing is happening. That wouldn't happen. I would be held accountable. I would most likely be in jail. So the woman who was last seen with the child, she has a record a mile long, from what I understand. And I think we're going to get deeper into this in the next Melanated Solutions Media broadcast.
Yeah. This subject is difficult for me because in 2016 I was diagnosed with acute PTSD in relation to the shootings being visible of Philando Castile and the death of Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, back to back within a 24-hour period. And for me, it's just like, this is my first, I've seen the images of Kuan, but this is my first time seeing the images in color. And that does put a different take on it. But with that being said, I am very much so interested in the conclusion of this story because it is not conclusive. And I think these images at best will inspire individuals to be invested in the story so that way it's not swept under the rug. Right. As another Black body was rolled up in a rug and thrown behind some bleachers a few years ago. So these are some things that we just need to consider going forward.
Yeah. Agreed.
All right. Well, in other news, in 2020, right, Trump has yet to concede. And they are still I think they're trying to shame him into conceding, because everybody's just carrying on like he made a concession speech. I believe Biden made a statement today. Also, there are more COVID lockdowns as the numbers are steadily rising in what some are calling a second wave. So what are y'all thoughts on both of those, 2020?
I wish I had found the meme beforehand, but there's these various memes that talk about how the rest of the world is literally going back to regular business, and then America is like Internet Explorer, like when it comes to wearing masks, the rest of the world is caught up. They're going back to their industrial businesses and everything else, and here we are still dealing with the real effects of COVID. But to that same vein, I guess it's just fair to say America is late. Trump is late with his concession speech, and America is late with dealing with the COVID virus.
Blitz, I know you.
I don't think that Trump is late. I don't think Trump is. I don't think that Trump is going to leave until there is no other option but for him to leave. I think we are just seeing something we've never seen before. I don't think he's I think he's not going to go. And speaking of COVID and the White House, I don't know if you heard it, but Donald Jr. has COVID, and so does Giuliani's son. That was just before. Yes. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Here's what I'm going to say about COVID while we're locking down. My question is this: if Trump had COVID and several people of his cabinet had in his group had COVID, and they were able to return to the public in 10 days, why are we not asking what did they take, and why are we locking down when they were able to go out 10 days later? That's a question that I have. Why aren't we demanding to know what they were given outside of this vaccine? Because we locking down and they walking around 10 days later.
Good
So,
question.
you know, and by the way, the lockdown, just on that, Key West just decided that you can't go outside. Key West, Florida has decided you can't go outside. This is not just the mask for social distancing. You can't go outside in Key West without a mask on. It doesn't matter if you can safely social distance. You can't walk your dog. You can't take a walk in Key West outside of your house without a mask on. That's what it's gotten to. So,
well, I can tell you right now, like being in Florida, this is land of the anti-maskers. So this is going to be interesting to see how this plays out, because the governor of Florida is not having it. He's like a Trump, what do you call it? Devotee or something like that, right? Ron DeSantis, I don't see him upholding that. So this is going to be interesting to see Key West, which is like a world of its own. If you've been to Florida,
it's like a world of its own.
It's a world of its own. They're separated from everybody on the mainland. It's going to be interesting to see that play out between those two, municipalities or state powers. So, also in the current events, well, first of all, we got some comments here in the comment section. They've been kind of getting a little lit. Jamal Piggott said Trump is delusional. Well, aren't all white supremacists?
I was gonna say,
and our local embarrassment, Ben Carson, Tamina Rawls said. Now, Kat Mahari, who's a Jim and is a regular here, said Germany and France has restrictions in place, and the previous flu pandemic did not have a coordinated government response either. Interesting.
Okay.
I was born in '92, y'all. So some of these things I just don't know.
Okay.
Well, I didn't live through the flu pandemic either. I don't think I did. That was like in 1917 or something, right?
Right.
But anyway,
we know you were good on succubus.
That was on the current events was the Million MAGA March.
Okay.
Right. And so did y'all check out any of the live streams? Because I know we got Brother Deshaun Farrar is going to be joining us.
Yeah, I saw a few comments and clips of the live streams. It was like a 4-hour stream I had saw at one point, and I clearly wasn't embracing that. But I had saw some stuff. Seemed very Christian-y. At least from the speeches parts, it's like a lot of the speech was really highlighting quote unquote Christian values, and that Christ is demanding that Trump be in office and lead this country, and that it's this ideology that they didn't say this part, but white supremacy and Christianity is aligned.
But the videos outside of that were very confusing, because the video I saw, I think the group that posted it was Manic One. I think that's the name. If you watch their video, and I'm like you, Duke, I couldn't watch 4 hours of that, but they were talking to people on the outskirts. So in the beginning of the video, you got the MAGA Trump supporters mad at the cops for protecting the so-called liberals. Y'all protecting the liberals, and they don't even support blue. So we saw that. Then later on, you got the liberals complaining as the nighttime fell that the police were protecting the MAGA people. And then there was an argument that the Proud Boys were protecting MAGA. And then you had this MAGA kid later on talking about he got whipped by the Proud Boys. So I couldn't even, the narrative, depending on what part of a video you watched, wasn't even consistent. Proud Boys were either for Trump or against Trump. The police were either protecting liberals or protecting. I don't know. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I think that people experience what they want to experience at those kinds of marches. They had the experience they wanted to have. They saw it from whatever perspective they came in with. That's what I got from it.
Well, what's beautiful is, like Kashana mentioned, we have someone who was actually there, and so I think it's it's a great time to bring them in, and let's see what was happening.
So we got brother Deshaun. He's backstage. Adam, can you bring there he is.
Yep.
Can you see me?
No, but we can hear you.
Okay, wow. I don't know what's going on because this camera is actually, it says the camera's on and I see the camera's lit.
Is it covered? Is it covered?
It's not. No, it's not covered at all. Here we go. It was covered. I thought it was uncovered. Like, here I am removing something, thinking that it was uncovered, and something told me. I didn't even realize it. I didn't even notice this had that. But go ahead.
All right. Well, brother, there was a lot of confusion and chaos, obviously, at the Million Maggot March. But I know you were there. For one thing, that's how that's how I watched a lot of the live stream footage. I watched it through your platform, Attraction. And well, first it was your Facebook page that caught my attention. And so I caught the full footage then. But I would like for you to give us your summation of the event from your eyes, and then we're going to go to some of the footage that you caught as well.
Well, this past Saturday, of course, when I covered the Million Mega March as well as the Stop the Steal rally and march as well, it is apparent to me that white America is at war with itself more than ever. And April 1995, when I was 17 years old, the week after the bombing of the Oklahoma City building, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has spoken in North New Jersey at Symphony Hall, and he actually spoke about this, and he spoke about the militias being majority white, challenging the government to war. And he said in his speech that this is what white folks are saying to white folks. If it's war you want, then it's war we'll give you. And that's what I saw while covering this. Right now, something that may not have been reported, but I actually saw this. Okay, we keep hearing about, and I believe our sister Bliss had mentioned this, people attacking each other. In all fairness to the Trump people, it wasn't just Trump's people that were attacking each other. You had people that were anti-Trump. Some of the people that were either Antifa or inspired by Antifa, and the anti-Trumpsters, many of them were white. I also did a stream of the Antifa march /Black Lives Matter, and a majority of the participants were white folks, leftist white folks, liberal white folks, our quote liberal friends. And there was a certain point that after the march, after the mega march, and after the Antifa march, I was at the Grand Hyatt Hotel, which is that's Chinatown, DC. I've been to that hotel many times. Some of the Antifa supporters or the leftists tried to rush the hotel to get at the Trump supporters. And I streamed some of that. But the Trump supporters weren't backing down. The Trump supporters were like, bring it on. They were trying to rush outside. And these are white folks against white folks. So I'm sitting back and I streamed some of it. And I actually interviewed some of the supporters of President Trump. And they were telling me, look, we're taking our country back against these, against leftists and fascists. And it's amazing how both sides will accuse the other of being leftists and fascists. But I wanted to tell you something. Early in the day when I was covering the actual march, as I was, you saw my coverage, brother Kashama, and one of the stereotypes about Trump supporters is that these are oftentimes backwoods people, rednecks, folks that are hillbillies. No, Trump has. Keep in mind, the main reason why President Trump won 4 years ago is because white folks across party lines, cross ideological lines, cross sexuality lines, voted for him. This was an example of white unity, okay? And there were blue collar people, there were white collar workers, lawyers, doctors. There were people that were upper middle class who supported President Trump because they felt that Trump was anti-establishment. Keep in mind that President Trump and Bernie Sanders both shared the same type of voters, people that were tired of the system, tired of the establishment. Remember, Hillary Clinton is an establishment politician. Barack Obama is an establishment politician. Joe Biden is an establishment politician. And Trump, when it comes to whenever we discuss the elite, or whenever we discuss those in power, Trump has never been seen as one of them. I remember a long time ago, my freshman year in college, there was a professor of mine, a sociologist by the name of Dr. Patricia Reed Merritt. She had said, we were talking about elitism and we were talking about the billionaires that run this country. And she said, I don't care, no matter how much money he has. And he said he would never be considered one of him. She was like, and do you know who that is? Donald Trump. And I saw that all throughout the first campaign. Trump is not considered one of them, the establishment. And so that's the reason why he had so much support. And you actually saw people that believe in the concept of the deep state, the Illuminati, if you would, people that believe in that. That was ironically people that are on the extreme left and people that are on the extreme right both believe in that. And so that's actually what you saw, a clash between that. They're dissatisfied. Go ahead now. So, like I said, I actually interviewed people. If you saw some of my footage, I interviewed people that felt that Trump was anti-establishment. That's why they voted for him. I interviewed a mixed couple, a white man who had a black wife, and they disputed the concept. They disputed the notion that Trump is racist. I interviewed a white gay man that was in support of Trump. And actually, I didn't interview him. I spoke to him off camera because by that time we had to end the broadcast. But it was a white gay man. He saw some LGBTQ advocates holding the rainbow flag, and he said to them, "Excuse me, y'all, but that's BS." And he got us. I asked him. I said, President Trump has been called homophobic. Why do you support him? And he said to me, President Trump's not homophobic. He's done nothing proving that. He said, he started speaking the usual. Trump is fighting against the system. So you have an example of white. Notice what I said, white folks, because the majority of his supporters are white, but also the majority of the people that were marching against Trump, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, were also white folks. So what we see right now is a clash. We see a clash among white activists that are anti-establishment. Once again, Trump supporters, Antifa, Black Lives Matter. These are white folks that are anti-establishment. But then, of course, beyond that, you have white folks that are pro-establishment that Trump supporters are fighting against. So you see this war brooding, a civil war brooding within white America. Mm-hmm. That I think, as you can see, will get violent. But go ahead.
I'm glad that you highlighted that this is a brawl of sorts between white people, because what people often forget is even when it comes to the quote unquote Black Lives Matter movement, a lot of the violence and interactions that we saw online with buildings being burned down or things being vandalized happened from quote unquote white supporters and allies going in to do their business, who don't live in the neighborhood, who don't have to be involved with these particular resources, traveling from out of state to do it, and then leaving, and then Black people are dealing with the residual outcome of what is happening. And so I'm glad you're highlighting that, because I think, if anything, no matter where anyone falls at on the lines around political ideology, is that you need to be strategic and make sure that you are taking claim for the things that you do, and making sure that when other folks are doing things that have nothing outside of you, that you are making sure that you are invested in protecting your movement and moving those people outside of your movement, and not claiming it, because it's really hard out there.
Brother Duke, I saw that when I covered the killing of that brother in Philadelphia, the mentally ill man, a few weeks ago. And I saw white folks posing as protesters, damaging property, including setting a couch on fire. One even ran his vehicle. He ran his bike into a squad car. And the sister that I spoke with on camera, she said when that brother was first killed, you could see white folks with out of town plates getting out their car, smashing the businesses. And that falls back on us. And then on top of it, here's where white arrogance comes in. You're coming in the community in the name of Black Lives Matter. And then when members of the press, members of the Black press in particular, want to video record us, you're going to tell us, you cannot record us. Don't record us. You want to come in our community in our name and tell us that we can't record you. And people on the block were going off on them, not the activists. In Philadelphia, you had brothers and sisters on the block that were going off for these protesters. The same thing in DC. I saw that too. People snapping on them. Get out of our community. Stop starting trouble, because it falls on us.
So we got some footage, brother, that I want us to go ahead and look at, that you were able to capture. Brother Deshaun actually was gracious enough to give us access to over 7 hours of footage from the Extraction Attraction channel on YouTube. Make sure y'all go to there and like, share, and subscribe. But without further ado, Adam, can you roll that for us?
flag stands for freedoms. My husband fought 27 years in the military so we can have these freedoms. I brought our 10-year-old son because he needs to know that this movement is a movement of peace and love and freedom, unlike the other movement. The other movement is here to destroy our country. Fascism, socialism, communism, follow the money. Follow the money. That's all I gotta say. Follow the money. Pray for America.
No KKK, no fascist, USA. No job, no KKK, no fascist. Are you a little outnumbered there?
Yeah. Wow.
So I chose those two clips out of all 7 hours because it showed, well, for one thing, it showed what Brother Deshaun said about how white people united. That woman, you saw the rainbow flag in the back, right, Duke Bliss?
Yeah.
Right. That was on Trump's side, that rainbow flag. So you showed that.
Yes. And you saw quite a few rainbow. That's the thing. You saw quite a few rainbow flags at the Trump demonstrations. You saw that, LGBTQ for Trump. And remember, 4 years ago, you actually had a group in America called Gays for Trump. So here you have, once again, white gay folks, okay, who were supposed to be so liberal, trying to seek access to white supremacy.
Mm-hmm. James Baldwin was he was so on time when he mentioned and spoke on that particular phenomenon amongst white gays. And James Baldwin specifically mentioned that they are not oppressed in the sense of a Black individual dealing with sexuality behaviors. He said that white gays are simply upset that they don't have the exact same amount of power as their peers. And that's it. He said that this is what your movement is for. He said, so he refused to be called gay in that sense. But so many of us become misguided. I'm looking at those two brothers arguing amongst each other, and I'm like, get out, legitimately and figuratively, get out, because this is a battle between white folks, and we need to be organizing to deal with the aftermath.
Yes, sir.
It kind of is a battle between white folks, but we need to pay attention because we don't have a clear side here. Because what you got to understand with this is that liberals will give you some freedoms, but liberals will also be the ones pushing you to take that vaccine.
That's right.
And
talk about it. Yes.
Mandating that you take that vaccine. Let us not miss the comment from Governor Cuomo this past week, under the guise of being helpful for Black folks, that when the vaccine comes, and I'm summarizing, that Black and brown people should not be left behind in terms of getting the vaccine. That the first vaccine that y'all done got, that y'all rushing through, that took less than 7 years to develop, all of a sudden you've become the Black and brown person's ally. That's your liberal agenda right there. So we got to be real careful about looking at either one of these sides and thinking that we can fully align. We need to be taking from each side what we need and be forming our own way of dealing in this society. Let them fight amongst ourselves, but know that on each side is problematic. I don't think the conservatives are more problematic for Black folks than the liberals are. I think they're both problematic, and we have to know this is, I keep calling it a chess game, but this is way beyond chess. This is way beyond a chess game. We have to pay attention. And
it's just a flip. Right. So, Sister Bliss, I'm glad you raised that point, because the thing that has sickened me about our community for quite some time, I'm not just a journalist and a writer and a broadcaster, but, I'm an activist. And so as such, I've had the honor of traveling across the country. I was a member of the new Black Panther Party. And the thing that has sickened me the most about our community is what I refer to, and I borrowed this from Dr. Michael Eric Dyson, Black people suffer from Afro-amnesia. Okay, you act like President Trump, you act like white, not you, but you act like white supremacy did not exist before President Trump.
Right.
And that's the thing that's sick of me. You know, a lot of us got very comfortable, especially under Barack Obama. Many of us thought because we have college degrees, we got white girlfriends, white boyfriends, white husbands, etc. And then with a black president, everything is okay. What President Trump did nothing but unknowingly pull the sheets off of what our grandparents said. See, Minister Farrakhan said something a long time ago. He said, you don't know the white man the way your grandfathers did. And a lot of us, whenever, you know, I don't get upset whenever I hear a white person say, you know, I don't want my daughter dating N-words. I don't get upset and say he should be fired. No, that is whenever you research the Pew Research or Gallup poll, they would say that most white people have hatred towards black people. You read these different polls. Okay, so I'm not surprised. But we have to stop acting like President Trump is an anomaly. No, he's not an anomaly.
And actually, we should be, in a way, we should be glad to have, I'm sorry, dude, I just want to say we should be glad to have President Trump, and I'll tell you why. Because we were sleeping for a very long time. A lot of us had to get shaken by what we're seeing now to understand we don't have post-racial America. We never did. And some of us finally got to see that under our lovely black president, we got duped. We did. Absolutely. It is unfortunate. Right. But it is what it is.
Absolutely right. So, Brother Deshaun, I want to thank you again for coming and sharing your insight. It's always appreciated, man. Someone of your level of professionalism and experience coming and taking the time to stop by and show us, you know, what you're seeing out there in the world. What was that?
Can I ask you one more thing, brother, before I go off air, family? Can one of you please answer Dr. Cleo Monago's question? How do we forgive other black people? Because Dr. Monago was always talking about his jealousy of how white people united to get Trump in office. Mm-hmm. And you know, a lot of us, you know, look at how black folk have been treating each other just for questioning Democrats, questioning Biden and Kamala. You have black folks literally worried. I got attacked verbally, not for criticizing Kamala Harris and Biden, but for even questioning them. You got black folks attacking other black folks over a white man. Biden. How dare you say anything against our white savior? But I'm out.
Well, no, you're absolutely right. And Dr. Cleo Monago is going to have to be patient because we're definitely going to get into that within this show, and we want everyone to stay tuned. But Brother Deshaun, before we let you go, can you tell our viewing audience how they can find you? Like where can we follow you and view your footage as you travel across the country and record all the craziness?
Okay, well, listen up, family. You know, I'm paid very well, but I got to let you know, I'm raising money for a reserve travel fund. So first, I'm going to give you the money information. If you would like to contribute to my travel fund, it's on Cash App, $D Farad. The first, you know, my first initial and my last name, D Farad, $D Farad. You can find me at Attraction on YouTube. That's the news network that I work with. Brother Razel Patah, he is my assignment editor. I've been with him for quite some time. You can also follow me on Facebook, Dashawn Farad, Instagram, Dashawn Farad Media. And I've also had the opportunity of working with Dr. Boyce Watkins, Black Agenda Report, Brother Glenn Ford. I've had the opportunity of reporting for many outlets, the Movement Magazine, Foresight for Life, so many, Experience Reality Magazine out of DC. But you can follow me Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Dashawn Farad Media on Instagram, Twitter, Dashawn Farad, and you can cash at me at $D Farad. But the channel, once again, is Attraction on YouTube.
Thank you, Deshaun.
Thank you for having me, my friend. And Sister Bliss, I swear you look like you could be Felicia Rassad's daughter or granddaughter.
Oh, that's a very lovely compliment. Thank you. I take that. I embrace it. Thank you.
I'm looking at you like, wait a minute, that looks like Felicia, honestly, beloved. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Family, thank you for having me. Hotep and Black Power.
Hotep, brother. Thank you for stopping by.
Black Power.
So, I mean, Dr. Monago kicked it off in the chats. How do we forgive other black people? I think it's important that we recognize that, yes, there was a lot of unity going on at that MAGA march. And white people weren't necessarily, arguing over gender or sexuality, or it was just about USA, USA, white, 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 manifest destiny and all that. So we are going to have to get on code and start to figure out how we can have, our own reconciliation with each other in order to forward our progression. So the title of today's broadcast is Truth and Black Reconciliation. How do we forgive other Black people? My question to you, Bliss, to you, Brother Duke, is what does truth and Black reconciliation mean to you when you think of it? What does it look like? What does it mean?
For me, it means I have to be willing to be uncomfortable. I have to be willing to sometimes be wrong. I have to sometimes be willing to emotionally detach from maybe my preferences about a situation. And I think it depends on what we're talking about specifically, but those are the some of the things that I have to consider in terms of forgiveness and trying to move the needle forward. And I have to decide whether or not I'm forgiving to move the needle forward, or I'm forgiving just to have some peace, because there are two different reasons sometimes why I'm forgiving. So that's part of it. That's the beginning.
I like to be prepped for questions, Kashama. But no, when I think of truth, the first thing that comes to mind is that there are multiple truths. And I'm so used to, especially when you're younger, but I think growing into adulthood, it's that knowing that just because I have a truth, it does not mean that everything outside of that is a lie. There are multiple truths that are happening at the same time. And then the reconciliation part is not just reconciling with someone else, but I have to also reconcile with myself, with whatever decisions or things that have happen to be made. So that's what I'm thinking of in those first two components of that question.
Okay, so Stanya Ross has in the comment section, we have to have the ability to hear each other in a non-reactive way. Yeah, I agree with that. And I feel a little bit, I guess biased, not biased, but what do you call it? Like I kind of cheated a little bit because I did, choose the title, and I did kind of do a little research on Black reconciliation. So for me to say what it means to me is a little bit influenced by a lot of the videos that we're going to watch tonight, and just issues of Black reconciliation, period. So with that being said, let's kind of break into some Black reconciliation that we've seen happen recently. I know there was the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air reunion. Did either of you get a chance to watch that?
I saw clips, and I remember the promotion leading up to it. It was very interesting to see. God, I'm gonna be smacked and have my black card taken away. I forget her name, but it was so good.
Janet Hubert.
Janet Hubert.
And Daphne Maxwell Reid. That's the other lady.
But it was so comforting to see both of the mamas come through and have that talk, and specifically Janet Hubert, of course. I do remember seeing Will and Janet sitting. It looked like a movie theater that they were in, or theater, a seat of arrangements, and they had a really powerful just moment of truth in reconciling, if you will. But it was beautiful to see them talk it out. For me, I hope and pray that it was not just for show. And I say that just in the sense that I know that sometimes we do these things just because it's what everybody else wants. But I do feel like those are some grown folk individuals who finally nipped it in the bud. And so it'd be great for you to show that, see what people
do you
can
have
aspire.
Well, we just saw a photo of them, but what were you about to say, Liz?
I was just going to say, one of the things that when you watch the one-on-one between Will Smith and Janet Hubert is that the conversation is uncomfortable. It hurts on both sides. You can feel the hurt on both sides, because she suffered and she stayed angry a very long time. But when you understood the level of suffering that she went through behind what happened between them, it was like for the first time you could see Will coming to terms with it. I don't know that what he did was intentional. I don't think it was, but at the end of the day, it caused hurt and damage, and it was uncomfortable to watch. But like you said, Duke, it was beautiful. It was a place it was something that needed to happen, and I'm glad that we got to see it visually. I think it did a wonders for us as a collective to see that, because there was a tremendous amount of angst for years. If you ever saw Janet Hubert interview in the years
So
since,
much.
she was always on 100 when it came to talking about Will Smith, and Will Smith was pretty much silent. So it was a beautiful moment, and the pain was there. And sometimes that's what it takes. Everybody's got to hurt, but everybody can get through it if we're just being honest. So that moment was beautiful for that reason.
Yeah, I must admit, I was skeptical about the authenticity of it before I watched it. Only because I know Hollywood, and I know Will Smith is like A-list, things are quite controlled when you're at that level of success or whatever in Hollywood and in mainstream entertainment. So I was skeptical as far as the authenticity of it, and are they doing this for show? Because after all, you can't have a Fresh Prince reunion without the first Aunt Viv, without reconciling, right?
Sure.
Without reconciling what happened.
He could have done that easily.
Well,
It
you
wouldn't have been,
could
it
have
wouldn't
done
have been
it,
as good, but he could have done it. He could have done it. Just
but black folks
on
would have been like side-eyeing the hell out of it. You already know, Bliss. We would have been side-eyeing it to pieces. Like,
There's enough people that had sided with Will Smith and his star statue that would have overlooked the fact that she wasn't there, and would have gone to the footage that they had seen of her over the years. I mean, and she rightfully so. I'm not judging why, but she was vicious in terms of the way that she spoke to Will Smith. So if he had done that reunion without her, there's a lot of people that would have been like, well, she's always talking about him. I don't blame. They would have supported him. He's got the star power.
There would have been people who would have accepted it, right? Especially with her being dark skinned. I agree with you, but it wouldn't have been right. And he knew it wouldn't have been right. And anybody with sense of critical thinking skills knew it wouldn't have been right. But I say all that to say, after I watched it, it felt genuine. It felt authentic to me. And it was emotional watching, you know what I'm saying? Because here he was 21 years old, as he said. He was being controlled and manipulated by all these handlers, and they were going between them and lying. And I think the biggest lesson out of that is for black people to communicate. Don't let no white handlers and and all of your enemies become middle ground between you and another black person. Get it out the horse's mouth. And so she basically he was like, I thought you hated me. And she said, yeah, and they told me that it was all your idea or something like that. But I'm glad that we got to witness it. Like you said, Bliss, we needed that.
Part of me wonders, and of course it wasn't a direct relation, but I wonder how much impact James Avery's passing had an impact on them deciding to really, nip this in the bud. Because so oftentimes it's the confrontation with mortality that people are like, you know what, I need to right some wrongs. I need to let go of some things. And 2020 has been a tremendous trying trial of a year. And what I want to offer for folks is a common thing that we say, but we don't put into practice, is about giving folks their flowers while they are here. And it's just such a matter. It's so sad that we want to reconcile around the funerals and around the around the despondent moments of our community. But I don't want to leave this topic too far as just forgiving Black people in general, and we're moving into the healing conversation if you really want, and that's what we really need. It's a lot of healing. But I have a story, and it's a quick story I want to share with you too, and y'all to see if y'all can point out something. So when I was younger, I was heavily attracted to light-skinned folks. I thought dark skin was ugly. I did not want to be dark-skinned. I wanted a different name. You would never catch me with locks. And this is me in elementary and middle school, by the way, as far as time frame. Okay, I'm talking about at least from the time of second grade up until at least sixth grade is when I had this particular thought pattern consistently through and through. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I wind up seeing, Facebook on this day notifications, and I had wrote about this particular experience because I was the child that prayed for lighter skin, right? And what I had posted in my comment section was that I find it completely crazy and insane that if I had kept these same thought patterns and ideologies from when I had it as a kid, that I would be blamed for it in my adulthood. That I would be considered a bad Black person. That I would be considered a quote unquote coon, this word that we want to use around each other. I found it insane. And I want to see if you two know why I think that.
Well, okay, I don't know if I'm understanding clearly. So you're saying if you had kept that same mentality,
if I had kept the same mentality from a childhood about anti-Blackness up until my adulthood, and someone considered me a coon or anti-Black race individual, whatever else, white supremacist, that if people call me those things, I think that's insane. I think it's insane. I'm gonna see if y'all can point out why. I'm ready to share.
Demonstrate that behavior. So if your feeling about that meant you didn't date anyone who was Black, or you were verbally anti-Black in the things that you said, then at a certain point in time as an adult, we understand the reason, because we all suffer from whatever our traumas are. They come out in us as adults, but at some point you got to get it together. So we look at Black folks. We all know that Black folks who are anti-Black have some trauma behind that. There's some trauma experience that results in anti-Blackness. But we still call it out, because not calling it out, we don't do you any justice by not acknowledging it. Now, calling you a coon is different from, or calling a person like that a coon. It's dismissive. It is. It's like calling somebody crazy who has a mental health illness. It's dismissive. It's lazy. But at the end of the day, you're being judged on your actions. So, and I was going, I'm not going here. I was just thinking.
Wait, where were you about to go?
we going here. This is how we get to it.
I was thinking about how we saw behavior in people like Tyrese and Terry Crews, and some of that behavior that we've seen from these brothers comes from the trauma. But at the end of the day, they're still responsible for the behaviors and the anti-Blackness. So we had to call it out to get to it. So Tyrese has finally admitted some of his behavior is due to the fact that he was traumatized for being dark. A brother like Terry Crews, and he's not the only one. They were just the ones that I thought of. So, y'all can say me the nasty notes.
No. I didn't know that Tyrese admitted, for me, I know this now as a critical thinker, but I didn't know that he talked about it. Kashawn, what are your thoughts on why I think it would be crazy to dismiss me?
Well, because it's absent of the knowledge or the awareness that Black people suffer from trauma. One, which is, like a symptom of the trauma itself. you get gaslighted into not recognizing that you're being abused. So if, the default in this society is anti-Blackness. So for a person to be anti-Black, they're just being the default. They're just being what society has conditioned and groomed them, and even rewards them for being. Hell, you might be the one crazy. Let society tell it. You hoteps. You Black ashy. Ashe, Africans, Afrocentric, pro-Black, this, you walk around hating white people and looking too deep into everything. So you might be the crazy one. Let society tell it. Crazy is relative. It's lazy, like Bliss said. It's not getting at the actual tangible, meat of what a person's behavior is indicating, because that's all we can really judge is behavior. And then we can look for reasons why, or the root behind someone's behavior. But the reason it's insane is because you're trying to diagnose or pathologize somebody when you yourself are unaware of how the actual mind works. If you're not aware that Black people suffer from trauma, just in general, if they're growing up on this planet, as Nearly Fuller say,
I thank you. And things I want to point out, and the reason why I share that is because we all walk this line of dealing with loving ourselves as Black people in a country like this, right? Like I don't know a single. I say this all the time. This is my particular ideology. I don't know a single Black person that's sane in this country. I don't feel like that's possible. Like
Right.
you have to engage with craziness no matter where you fall at far as quote unquote loving yourself or hating yourself. You have to indulge with craziness in order to get to those particular points, right? As a child, as Kashama mentioned, the default was anti-Blackness, right? Like I was taught how to maneuver in this society in trying to erase my Blackness. I was taught to not stay outside in the sun too long, right? I was taught that girls needed to have their hair permed and not curly and upfront. I was taught these things from childhood and groomed into this, right? And not only from my household, but of course the outside statistical factors as well, and like where you see Black people at in television or in work careers and all of these things impact the development of a child, and to that end, with little to no intervention or ways to interrupt it, right? My mother was not sitting me down and having a conversation about my skin and saying, you need to love yourself and this blah blah blah. When I approached her and said certain things about wanting lighter skin or a different name that sounded a little bit more white, like but cooler or something else, blah blah blah. There was no she didn't know how. She didn't have the tools to interact with me and deal with my traumas, right? There's so many narratives and stories out there, especially I think we mentioned it on our last health stream broadcast about the doll test, about how young do you have to be to start absorbing anti-Black messaging into your ideology. These children were no older than like 3 or 4, right? Already having an understanding that Blackness is devalued in comparison to whiteness, and with no interruption of that ideology from childhood into adulthood, of course you're gonna walk around here thinking the same things that you thought from as a child. Like it's what happens. And Kashama mentioned a very, very important point. Not only are you taught these things, you are rewarded for thinking. You are rewarded and put in positions of power and great economic opportunity and value. It happens consistently in this country and in world over at this point. To think that Blackness is devalued, I don't want to take up the stage, but I wanted to the comment section.
We're getting into truth and Black reconciliation. So this is this is core to it. The question of how do we forgive other Black people? We do have to understand that we are first conditioned and rewarded not to forgive Black people and not to be Black first. So we have just a couple examples of some things that went down. Maxine Waters, who some of y'all affectionately call Auntie Maxine.
And I still call her Auntie. She made me mad, but
she talked about how she won't forgive Black men for voting for Trump. In addition to that, you had, we're going to talk about all of this. In addition to that, you had 50 Cent, who everybody knows literally has no chill and no mercy when it comes to dragging Black women, who said, who basically like humbled himself for Chelsea Handler, who, basically told him how to vote. And, we have all of these instances. We have the Jean family, who decided to hug and forgive and wish Amber Geiger the best. So we have all of these instances that show Black people who are readily and willing to forgive white people, not just white people in general, but I mean abusive, murderous white people like Joseph Biden and Amber Geiger. But then, turn around and have the most vicious reactions towards Black people, such as Maxine Waters' reaction to Black male Trump voters, and how 50 Cent usually interacts with any Black woman that comes for him.
Okay, let me just touch, because I had brought it up on the last show about Maxine Waters. I was the one who was a little more verbal about that. When I think about Maxine Waters and I talked about a lot of the Black feminists not wanting to forgive Black men for the vote. One of the things that I've thought about in that time is that also has to do with some other anger that some Black women have with Black men about other issues. So you see it surfacing under the guise of I'm mad at you for voting out of line. But there's a lot of anger with some of these, not all of these, some of these women about the personal things that they deal with in relationship to Black men. And sometimes that surfaces in ways that say, I'm angry with you about this. Like with a couple, they're arguing because somebody left the stove on, but really they really arguing because somebody isn't affectionate enough and isn't giving enough hugs. It's that same thing that we deal with in our community, that a lot of times some of that anger is displaced. We look for an opportunity to verbalize something else that ain't got nothing to do with. I'm not saying that some of these women are mad about the vote, but they're mad about some other stuff too, about feeling disconnected from Black men as well, and feeling like Black men haven't supported them on personal levels. That there's been a lot of conversation that I'm hearing kind of outside of these conversations about the frustration with Black men. I think we showed the picture of Jeezy and Gucci Man earlier. Did we show that picture? Am I speaking?
No, we haven't showed it yet, but
we haven't showed
we
it.
can get into that.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step ahead, but I thought we had shown
No,
it.
it's fine.
But what's interesting about this is that I did not watch this. This is something that would not grab my attention. But I did see some of the clips, and one of the things that I thought was profound is Jeezy's statement to Gucci in reference, and I'm going to bring this back to the anger, is that Gucci Man made some statement to Jeezy about his fit not being up to par, not bling bling enough. And Jeezy said, well, no, I don't have on a $10,000 outfit, but I own half of Atlanta. And while I'm gonna put an I statement, I'm like, go ahead, brother. When I look at Jeezy's page, so I go to his page now and I'm checking him out, I had forgotten that Jeezy is the same man that's also engaged to Jenny Ma. So you're conscious and you're talking about generational wealth and building in the Black community, and yet you got an Asian woman. So I have to figure out as a Black woman how to reconcile that. How do I still support this brother? Because he is exactly right about Black economics, but I'm still looking at him supporting this Asian girl. So, I mean, when we talk about reconciliation, even those of us who get it, who understand all these dynamics, I still got to go, okay, let me breathe. Let me figure out how to deal in this situation and what do I actually think about this brother? Because I'm going to tell you, when it comes to that, I'm less forgiving about brothers stepping out of the community than I'm in with sisters. And I'm not going to take up too much time. But back to Black reconciliation, it is still a struggle, and we got to tell the truth. So my truth is, even with that, I struggle when I see this brother with an Asian fiance. And I think I'm fair on most levels. I think I'm fairer than most when it comes to Black men and Black women and how we think and feel. But I struggle. So I'm gonna end that with that, because I could go forever. But yes, it's a struggle.
I think
but
that's
you got to
very
realize
valid
it's a struggle.
thing to say. Yeah. No, that's valid. I mean, I have that same dichotomy going on as well with how I view Jeezy and Gucci because of that whole Asian thing. And that was a whole thing before this versus, as far as Asian women were being praised as some type of prize or submissive or whatever. I don't even know what it all was, but that is something to think about. We're talking about Jeezy's financial and economic prowess, but that money, is it really staying among us, or is it going to Chinatown?
And him thinking about Black wealth. He's got a whole song about it. So how far are you thinking? Economics is about family too. That's the whole other dynamics that why white women vote with white men in terms of supporting Trump. They understand dynamics, and power is about family base. It starts there. So if we got a lot of work to do, because we, as forward thinking as Jeezy is, he doesn't get that part. So
yeah,
it's just
now, so one good thing did come out of this versus battle. We did have some Black unity, and some people came together to call out. There's a situation going on in our community. There is a brother who does good work. He's known as Talcum X by some. And so he
should we be
basically
saying?
he
I'm sorry,
dropped in and
Kashama,
was
you
like,
said the wrong
ATL,
word.
love y'all.
Kashama, you said the wrong word. It's not brother. It's brother.
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 He dropped in, when the Jeezy battle was like, ATL, love y'all. And somebody was like, this is an African only live stream security.
I wish Adam could play the trigger warning sign. Things for security.
He got the show and proof. I'm sorry, we can't just keep going like that. All of this, he tried to pull the whole Kamala thing, like the indignant, like, oh, I will not be questioned, I will not be lectured. No, brother, you got to show us a DNA test before you come to the next cookout. What y'all think?
At this point, I don't want the DNA test. I want by itself. I want the DNA test combined with the backstory, family history. I need your mother, your father, and a close friend of the family to verify what I'm looking at and seeing at this point, because we ain't got time. But I want. You had something, Bliss?
I don't know what the question. So is the question okay? So it's Sean, because I don't know the answer to this. I thought Sean King finally acknowledged he was half black, white mama, black father. So
allegedly.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
That number went down, Bliss. That number
went
from 50% to 25% real quick when people started questioning him.
Yeah. It's. So we still don't know because we know.
There was some dark. He said his mother had an affair with some dark stranger in the night.
Because maybe Mama has not been forthcoming. Maybe he don't know. I mean, is that what it is?
I want to point out that one, the link is live and open for people to come in and join us to chat with us. Please know that you come in, you bring your comment, we dialogue, but we do have a schedule to upkeep, and so we will be peacefully and lovingly escorting you out. But the topic and what we are very specifically communicating on is specifically how to forgive Black people. What is the truth reconciliation part? Now, there's some things that.
No, dude, I was just going to say all jokes aside, I want us to really look at Black truth and Black reconciliation happening for real, like for real, and under way more serious circumstances than the things that we have to deal with here in this country as Black people. The petty gender wars, the wars around sexuality, the wars around light skin, dark skin, all of that BS. I want us to look at the people of Sierra Leone after a decades-long civil war where neighbor fought against neighbor and committed horrible atrocities against each other, how they came together and reconciled with each other. Just real quick. And so we can kind of talk about that and get serious for a moment. And then hopefully somebody will come and join the chat and we can go and get into a lot of more issues in regards to reconciliation and what we got to tackle as a people. Adam, can you roll that real quick before we bring Tamina on? Neighbor fought against neighbor and committed horrible atrocities against each other.
John,
We have an adage which says, in our local dialect, bad bush no dey for throw picking, which in English means there is no place to throw away a bad child. No matter what happens, no matter what happens to a child or the way a child behaves, he is part of our community. And we have to live as a community. We cannot throw the child away. We know people who did all of these atrocities are Sierra Leoneans. Do we need to send them all to exile? No way. They are part of our resource, human resource. We can transform them, we can rehabilitate them to be very good citizens, to be productive, to help the very communities they destroyed. For instance, it is possible that communities will come up with a recommendation that offenders who were responsible for burning down their houses should work with victims to help rebuild these houses. It's a healing process. It's not a matter of money per se. It's a matter of the symbolic gesture of them showing remorse, of them coming forward to face their victims, or victims willing to see the offenders. The willingness to engage is the huge resource that we have in Sierra Leone that this project wants to tap on. Punishment is a relative term. You can punish people in different ways. Before the colonial masters came to Africa, there were no prisons. We in Africa have our way of addressing justice, but not by sending them to prison. Because if you punish someone, you send him or her to prison, you, the victim, will use your taxpayers' money to still feed him or her in prison. It's double punishment for you. So we are looking at ways of coming together, tap on the resources of our ancestors, tap on the resources of our community, our culture, and address this dark.
Ooh.
All right.
Awesome.
Yeah, so that was Sierra Leone, and we have someone from the chat who's joined us. Tamina Rawls, I believe, is backstage.
Hi, welcome
How
in.
you doing,
Beautiful people. How y'all doing?
Hey.
We're good. Hope you're good.
Good. What's on your mind?
Well, you know what? As far as forgiving other kinfolk and versus black folks, we have to first recognize the fact of our flaws and indifferences. I think black folks are the most conservative group of people that I've known throughout my life, and we have a lot of hang-ups as well as a lot of admittance and hurts and flaws of our own that we have to address as a community. And especially between black males and females, you know, we have been systematically broke down to the point where a lot of people consider that the norm, whereas if you look at other cultures, they pretty much do what they can to make sure that their culture and their community survive. By the black community not having a culture whatsoever, we're basically on our own. So therefore, we don't have a blueprint in how we can get our own society to focus and concentrate on unity. And that's where the work comes in. We have to work towards understanding one another, reintroducing each other. You understand what I'm saying? And then it breaks down into several levels. We have been so systematically broken down to where there is no black males in the home. There's a single parent household, economical breakdown. It's just a lot to unpack. It is. And we have to figure out how we can get to that first step. That's the issue. We have to figure out how to get to the first step. Now, Auntie Maxine, she's saying that she's angry with the black males or what have you. A lot of females are angry with the black males as well. But we have to get to the point where we have to understand why. We have to understand why black men and black females are so angry when we're all hurt as a whole. And that's what I'm reckoning with every day. 18% of black males voted for Donald Trump, from 12% in 2016. 4% of black females voted in 2016. 8% voted for Trump this time. Why? Why is that? Why go against your best interests? Why? Not trying to normalize something, but try to figure out why is it, instead of being so angry with them, why did they go this way? Why did you choose so and so, such and such? I have a child who's married to an Asian female. They've been married for 5 years. I have 4 sons. And they would tell me, Mom, the black female out there is hard to find. If you don't approach them a certain way, if you don't have a certain thing, if you're not financially stoked, they don't want to be interested. And I'm like, they're telling me and asking me as a black mother, what should I do? And I'm gonna be a woman and a mother first to my black sons. I tell them not to give up on certain things. Don't give up on the sisters because there's a lot of pain there. It's historic. But at the same time, whoever you love is your business. But don't forget, when you leave out that door, you represent us. And I expect that representation to be magnified.
Thank you so much, Tamina. That was great. I really appreciate that. Well, Cleo Monago said black men had issues with Kamala, so that could explain a lot of the black male Trump voters. Kat Mahari also said, speak for yourself. What they say, speak for yourself. I say black people have a culture, and at the same time, we are the subjects of social death. So again, Sister Tamina family, we want to thank you for coming on and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And please come back on our other on the next live stream and every other live stream as well. Do we have anyone else backstage, Adam? If not,
while looking, there's
sounds like you were about to say something.
Share. Yeah, there's some things I wanted to share. So the first thing is that we have to become really, really good at putting Black people in context. And I always look for textbook definitions and contextualizing situations. And so the word context, specifically, it says it is the circumstances that form the setting for an event, statement, or idea, and in terms of which it can be fully understood and assessed. And so that is the first thing that I want to make sure that we become very familiar with, this word context, and putting Black people, Black men, and Black women, and Black non-binary, and Black everything in between into a context of recognizing that we are inside of a racist society. We are inside of a society that, again, rewards this anti-Blackness. We are inside of a society that actually is economically built and thrives upon the idea of anti-Blackness, right? Like everything that we are dealing with is inside of this particular bubble. And a lot of times, Cleo Monago is actually famous for this particular simile or metaphor, if you will. He says that it's so insane to be upset with Black people because it's like being upset with upset to be with Black people for the way that they act inside of a racist society, because it's like being upset with a victim for a car crash victim. He knows the story better than me. A car crash victim for limping at the end of it, because racism is so traumatic to the Black body. It's so traumatic to our mental capacity and how we develop and love on each other that, of course, we act out. And another thing that was brought up earlier is this thing of displacement. Consistently, throughout our experience, we have been taught to minimize our anger. We have been taught to just wear a smile. We've been taught to just get a job, to get the family, and don't buck at our oppressors, right? From the time of slavery to the time of the Industrial Revolution to now, we are consistently pushed in this effort. I find it funny, real quick. I was watching Girlfriends. I finished to see all 8 seasons on Netflix. I binged it, and consistently, the story of Girlfriends, is about uplifting the values of women and how they deal with racism and things in society based on gender, and it made room for these women to buck at the system and to be mad and angry, right? To be mad and want to quit if they wanted to and just say, F that, I ain't dealing with that. But the male character in this particular storyline, William, when he had a legit moment where he was dealing with racism, he was put in a moment where it said, you can't do this because you got a child on the way. And his woman, who was normally a gung-ho for fighting against the system, was like, no, you can't do this. Because, like, what about protecting the family? Like, what about this, right? And so the reconciliation part is about making sure that we have our own systems and values of keeping the peace, of making sure that we are good at the end of the day. Sonia Roth had mentioned developing these systems and saying that we need to have them. I think one key thing, I'm all about practicality. If someone else has something, a key thing that I think is making sure that when you forgive people, you do it in a public manner, that you do this in a public display, similar to what Will Smith and Janet Hubert did when they had this reconciliation moment. We have to start demonstrating what reconciliation looks like, because a lot of times we don't, at least amongst each other. We reconcile and forgive white people all the time. We don't even have a blueprint on what it looks like amongst ourselves.
Whew, okay. There's so much to unpack, because we went to Sierra Leone for that moment, and the gentleman, just in case other folks weren't aware that that gentleman who was talking is John Calker, who founded Fembook Talk. That's the organization that he founded. And what the organization, the name actually means is it translates to family talk. I think that there's so many grand ideas that he was filling us with in that moment when we listened. There was so much just beautiful graciousness that he was talking about. But in the context of doing what he's doing in Sierra Leone and trying to do that in the United States, it's very different. In that there is not the same impact. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but we don't have this, there's not the same level of white supremacy that they deal with, that we deal with here. It's just different. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. It's just different. And that clip was from 10 years ago. And if you fast forward 10 years, there is still a struggle in Sierra Leone. They've made great progress, but they've had to make it as the collective without the government being involved. And the government there runs, it's pretty much Black folks that run the government there, I'm sure, behind the scenes. I don't know all the dynamics. But in the last couple of years, their first lady, and I think he's called the prime minister, I know her name is Fatima Maada Bio, has joined in on his movement and formed a separate movement called Hands Off Our Girls, because as Sierra Leone has been making progress, they're not cutting each other up, as you know, you're not seeing the guns being used on each other. There's a different temperament after in these 10 years, but they still have a major issue with rape. So again, there's so many, when we talk about reconciliation just across the board, there's so many layers to what that looks like. Because there's the violence, there's the Black on Black violence. When we talk about that, we usually think in terms of Black males, in terms of that kind of violence. Then you got the domestic violence, and then you got the levels of protecting your children. And they're different. We got to deal with them differently, but there's so much to acknowledge and unpack. But here, on top of trying to deal, we got the levels of white supremacy that we got to deal with. So even in looking at Sierra Leone and looking at that as the example, we still got to add the additional DNA of racism, of the effects of oppression that we suffer here, and at the levels that we constantly see, we're bombarded with. So there's so much. I just wanted to bring that information in so that we were clear on what we were looking at, who the gentleman was. So if people want to look more into it and see the path that Sierra Leone has taken, because it's been 10 years. This is a 10-year journey, and there's still a lot of work to be done. We've got to be committed to the time frame. That's one of the things. It is going to take time, and it's going to hurt, because you're going to find out you fix one thing, and you had a glaring light on this other thing. And in Sierra Leone, it is the issue of rape there now that the light has been shown on. You okay, we're not cutting each other up, but we still raping these young girls and in massive numbers. So there's so much to unpack. I know the show we only have a certain amount of time, but
I'm glad you brought that insight, because I didn't know. Well, I obviously watched the video and I saw that it was called Fembi Talk. But I didn't know who that brother was or the background behind it. And I also didn't know that they are, still dealing with issues such as, the rape of the young women there in Sierra Leone. But like you said, it's not a pretty process. First of all, we've been through some ugliness as a people. And I mean, we don't have enough time to get into it now, but you mentioned how we have the added issue of dealing with the attacks, the psychological and physical attacks of white power and white supremacy mythology. And what that brings me to is the narrative that has been promoted within, Black gay identified or LGBT and trans circles, whereas Black Lives Matter or Black resistance does not include Black, gender or sexual minorities, or the idea that we need a Black trans lives matter, or even the idea that the murder of Black trans people are comparable with the murder of Black men by police officers that has been happening, at real epidemic numbers. And so there's a lot of unpacking that needs to happen. We got to have a lot of family talks. to sit down and go over what type of trauma we've inflicted upon each other, and how to put it into perspective and context without so much white interruptions, and how to deflect white interruptions, such as the LGBT movement hijacking and co-opting our narratives, such as white feminism coming in and hijacking and co-opting our narratives, white liberal agendas out the woo-ha, and even white conservative agendas, as was pointed out. Like, we saw those two brothers on two different sides yelling and screaming at each other because one is on a liberal Antifa BLM side and one is on a conservative maggot side, when in reality, like you said, Bliss, we need to take what works for us and what we need from any and all sides and come together and put it together.
Exactly. We got to stop pretending we are friends. I mean, that's one of the things that you
can
have.
We quote that? Like, that needs to be the highlight of the show real quick.
Yeah. I mean,
we have no friends.
Well, we don't have, in these subgroups, in this, you can't fully align with it because it's not made for you. It's not made for us. So the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, it's not made for you. So you're only going to get crumbs. You can come to the party. You only going to get the crumbs. Whatever folks identify with, LGBT, LMNOP, whatever, you can align yourself with the group if you want to, but that group is not made for you. So at some point, you got to tell yourself the truth. You got to look at the truth. And when we talk about the trans community, and, I'm just, because this is where it seems to pop up. It's popped up a lot in 2020, where the trans community is always talking about this pandemic numbers. You don't have a pandemic. I'm sorry. What did you say?
30 people a year?
30 people. You don't have and you need to stop telling that lie. And if you're going to tell the story, tell the full truth. Some of that is you all, the trans community, killing each other. So you don't, I'm not discounting anyone's death. I do not want to present that way, and I'm not insensitive to it, but we really have to stop trying to raise our hand and get all the if we're talking about a movement for Black people, and I've said this many times in other places, we are talking about you, LGBTQ identified Black person with a limp, Black person, if you non-binary, Black person who's Republican. The movement is about us moving collectively. If you decide you want to scream about these numbers, you better make it make sense, because like you said, Duke, 30 doesn't make sense. That is as of this year. The trans identified people that we have identified have been murdered. But let me give you a number that you should be nervous about. I'm going to give you the number 40, and I'm going to give you the number 40 for kids 17 and under in Chicago. And that was just this summer in August alone. That's one city. That's Black youth, 40. And I always tell folks, if you don't believe me, Google it. So you want to talk about a pandemic? I said 40 in August in one city compared to 28 across the country. We got to tell some truth. Okay, we got to tell some truth.
Well, another
forward without
I think a real disservice is done to Black LGBTQ trans identified Black people when they try to get them to push out these ghost narratives, right? Because living in a city like Baltimore, where I saw more trans people in Baltimore than any other city ever, even more than Atlanta. Straight up. And the economic and social conditions that the Black trans people there, I'm not talking about nobody else. I'm talking about the Black trans people, the economic conditions that they live in and the situations they find themselves in order to survive. Like, the reasons a lot of them are getting murdered when they are not being murdered by other trans people, when they are actually being murdered by other groups, the situations they find themselves in. I'm gonna tell you, reparations would ease that. Reparations would stop a lot of that shit. Stop a lot of that stuff. These trans Black people on the streets, looking all destitute and with no way of taking care of themselves other than putting themselves at risk, reparations would stop that. So if you wanted to stop trans murders, you would get on a black agenda and stop letting these white rainbow whatever use you.
And here's what I'm going to say, and I know some folks are going to be mad, but economic reparations and not having that struggle, you'd probably see less people identifying as trans as well, because we got to talk about the psychological issue of that. So not only would you see less death, you would see less people talking about their trans and not.
I'll say it, Bliss. You'll see less black homosexual males,
yes,
who feel like they need to transition in order to make more money in sex work. I'll say it.
Yeah. You see a lot less of a lot of things. Yes.
Yeah, I think gender variance amongst Black people is always going to be a hot topic, but it just needs to be done in a Black context. So many, and everything that you brought up, Kashama, is that oftentimes we go off into these white spaces, learn white language on how to treat other people as human beings and deal with mental issues and blah, blah, blah. And then we bring it back to Black people. And it's like, this language is what caused the issue. Like the people who came up with this ideology is what caused the issue. And so it doesn't work about using these quote unquote master's tools. And so it is a moment of recognizing that we have the capacity within ourselves to define ourselves. We have the capacity in ourselves to define what being a human being and what loving human being is. And I'm sorry, getting notifications finally from I got it looks like a delayed reaction. But we have to recognize that, as you said, we have no friends in this. And so we have to develop the language for ourselves. I'm looking through these comments. I just want to highlight a few. Of course, we've been showcasing them throughout the night, but I want to make sure we voice some of them. We have Melvin Nesbitt that said Black uplifting includes or should include all Black people, hetero, LGBTQ, men, women, liberal, conservative. Division is a tool of white supremacy. And what I want to say to Melvin is that, yes, absolutely. And I think part of the way to getting to that, though, is not using white terms as the defining group of what these people, quote unquote, ideology is, right? So this is why we have to engage in finding out, you know what? Like I said, James Baldwin was an out and proud homosexual, but he was like, don't call me gay, because that's not his context. That's not how he navigates throughout this world. And then there's individuals of trans quote unquote identity who say, no, I'm gender variant, because that's just what makes sense to them. And it makes sense to me too, because it is outside of their paradigm. We have to contextualize ourselves outside of whiteness. Thank you, Teron. I don't know exactly what I said, but he said someone hit the nail on the head. So uplift to that. But with that being said, folks, we are getting ready to wind down towards the end of our mark. If I could say, I want everyone here to just leave some practical, easy to do things that you all think really helps with forgiving Black folks or a mindset that we can have moving forward. I'll just highlight things that I said earlier. We have to start forgiving Black people in public. When we have these displays of humanity towards each other, we can't be ashamed and we can't be, because so oftentimes, this is another thing, we will be very violent and vicious online and in public view and everything else, and then the apology is in the inbox some months or a year later, quietly, just like, I ain't really mean all those but the message is still out there, that harm is still out there in our community, and so all these perspectives still exist. So forgiving people in public, in dealing with trauma in public. Kashama?
Somebody mentioned humanity. I think it was you, Bliss, was it? But go ahead. But we were on a BMX Health live stream, right? Talking about heart, and I believe I was talking about connecting with yourself, like your humanity, right? And sometimes it's good to just forget about being Black and being, oppressed. I'm just saying, just to put things in the real perspective, right? Because, white people aren't God. They created a social system and social constructs that we live in and affect us, but they didn't create this world and they didn't create this universe. So I think understanding our humanity, understanding our universal universality or universalness under God, under the Creator. That's one thing that's going to help us reconcile with each other as Black people. We have to stop seeing each other through the lens of white power and through the lens of our oppressor. Start seeing each other through the lens of how we truly are like people. And then you start to see the trauma and the pain, and you start to see the reality of what you're dealing with, and not, this whole fantasy of what we are expecting of each other. So with that being said, it is 8:30. Bliss, did you give us your
No, Bliss did not.
You know what?
We've got to get your wrap up now.
Let me wrap it up real quick. You got to be okay with it's gonna hurt. It's a journey, and you got to be okay sometimes with you not being right all the time. You may not be right, and it's about change. It's about growth, and that is not easy, and you got to be okay with that. That's as easy and as quick as I can say it. You just got to be okay with it. Yeah,
it's gonna be painful.
Yeah.
Well, there it is. So I don't think it was an easy job for any Black people who have reconciled. I don't think it was easy for Will and Aunt Viv. It wasn't easy for them brothers and sisters in Sierra Leone. It's not going to be easy for us or Auntie Maxine. She going to have to get over it too. But anyway, y'all, it's 8:31, family. We love y'all. We will see you Friday after next. Be sure to tune in to our Health Focus live stream next Friday as well. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Catch us on Facebook and YouTube. Peace, family.
Peace.
Peace.
Night.